So our next group is the Almoravides. This particular Berber group developed as a result of responding against the sort of Shia leaning that had been going on in previous cultural dynasties. So this Yusuf ibn Tashfin, and I'm sorry if I'm crucifying Arabic, I'm not an Arabic speaker. He launched a holy war and decided that he was going to take over the leadership by establishing a new city of Marrakesh. We know it as Marrakesh. It's pronounced Marrakesh in Morocco. So in Andalusia, we also had other things going on, whereas the Alfonso VI, the king of Castile and Leon, was toppled the Umayyad Caliphate, and small taifas were developed, were formed instead. And the taifa were like tribal leaderships or tribal kings. And so there was a sort of a vacuum of power in Iberia at that time. And so the Iberians invited the Almoravides to come from Morocco into Spain to help them fight the Christians. And the result of that was they came into Spain to do that, but they took over. So now you have the flourishing of the Almoravide culture, not only in Marrakesh, but also in Iberia. And with that, the result is the building of many wonderful projects, including these two fragments. You only have fragments of this. Again, the minaret, I'm so sorry. Again, the minaret, and this particular remains of the top of a entryway, sort of a bob entryway that remains today. Also, a network of katara, which are underground water channels that brought water everywhere. So these things survived, and a part of the city wall. So what happened to it? Well, when the next fervent Islamic dynasty came under power, you have the Almohad, who decided that that they were going to prove that the Almoravides were debauched and were going to take over. So they destroyed most of their architectural grouping, of the things that had been created. There was a gentleman, Ibn Tumar, who labeled himself the Mahdi, which is a Messiah figure, and began preaching moral reform. They took over the main cities in Morocco and Andalusia, and then his successor was the one that actually had the building program, and his name was Abdel Mumin. And he reorganized the army, the administration, and the economy, and finally claimed the title of Caliph himself. So there were battles in Andalusia that led to their demise eventually, and the Christians were able to push them back into Morocco, but not without taking stylistic changes. So things that were happening in the architectural form in Iberia were now being applied to architectural structures that were being created here. For example, the flourishing of the muqarna. Muqarna are the stalactite stone designs which are put into recesses to kind of graduate between one surface plane to another. And there was more of that being integrated into, as we see, the Kutubia, which is probably the most important exemplar of the Almohad. There had originally been two mosques. One of them was destroyed. And so the actual form of the Kutubia Mosque is actually a trapezoid rather than a rectangular form. And the Hassan Tower, which you will find in Rabat, which is by the ocean, which had been started by Yusuf Yaqub al-Mansur, but unfortunately he died midway. And so this particular minaret was supposed to have been much taller, and the only thing that had been done for the body of the mosque itself were the columns. And they have left them as this. This is a photograph that I took a few years ago where you may visit that site. And the minaret stands at 44 meters, which is 140 feet tall, and there are about 200 columns left in that territory.